here on Middays. But right now, it's Michael Borkey, the producer of SportsTalk Mississippi. All right, Michael, thanks for coming in, man.
Oh, always good to be here.
Yeah, man. So it's bowl season in college football.
Almost over.
Almost over. There have been some good games and some blowouts.
Yeah, and what's interesting, up until yesterday with Texas-Arizona State, which was unbelievable. What a great game that was. Cam Scadaboo in a loss. I mean, he put Arizona State on his back all by himself, but the bowl games have been more entertaining, more compelling, like the actual games themselves in the playoffs, because Penn State blew out SMU, Notre Dame blew out Indiana, Ohio State blew out Tennessee, and then they went ahead and did it again yesterday. But in the bowl games, you've had, South Carolina, Illinois was, it was unbelievable. And you had drama and coaches getting after each other. And, that's what bowl season has been. And the playoff up until yesterday, not so much. And then, of course, you have the terrorist attack in New Orleans that added just another element to this postseason that's been a bit unique.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Ohio State has been a bit surprising. Did you expect them to be that strong?
I didn't expect them to be this strong after watching them play for 12 games this season.
Yeah.
But this roster is built for the way they look right now. I mean, they have the best duo of wide receivers in college football, and it's about time that Chip Kelly realized that, hey, wait a minute, let me throw the ball vertically because nobody can cover these two guys. And look at what they've become. This is what Ohio State always should have been. Why they were not this way to this point is the mystery. Not that they're good like this now. It's why did it take this long for them to look like this now? That's the question here.
So maybe you're suggesting that they underperformed relative to their roster.
100% they did. And they've had injuries on the offensive line as well. But and what's so funny is they lost to Michigan, and that was a fascinating loss in so many ways because Ryan Day was 47-1, I believe, against everybody in the Big Ten, not named Michigan, but that was his fourth loss to Michigan in a row. And fans wanted him to be fired and all of that stuff. That loss may have been the best thing that happened to them because offensively in that game and most of the season, they've been overly conservative. Really trying to run the ball, and they've got a couple of good backs, especially Henderson had a really good year, and Judkins backing him up, but Ole Miss fans know exactly who he is. Mm-hmm. But it felt like they were overly conservative. And after the Michigan game, they have allowed Will Howard to just let it fly. And because they have been so much more willing to test teams vertically, their two wide receivers have shown everybody why they're the two best receivers in college football.
Yeah, makes sense. All right. Well, tonight it's the bowl game that bears my favorite name, the Tax Slayer. Gator Bowl. I love the Tax Slayer mascot, by the way. Slay them taxes. But that features, of course, the Ole Miss Rebels and the Duke Blue Devils. What do you expect?
Yeah, it's a shame, by the way, that company it's just a company and not like a political stance for everybody involved. But it's bowl games are interesting, right? Because you have this narrative, maybe not be the right word, but you have this idea that they're meaningless. Bowl games don't matter. They're just glorified scrimmages, whatever. And then the ball kicks off, and suddenly there's a lot of meaning. Ask an Oklahoma fan or a South Carolina fan today if their games did not matter at all, because those fan bases are fighting mad about the result. A similar thing to me applies here. Ole Miss came up short. They had a playoff roster, and they could not get it done. Everybody knows that. And the Gator Bowl being where they ended up is a disappointment because that roster should not be in the Gator Bowl, and yet here they are. Yeah. And so you have this, well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. When the ball kicks off tonight, the result of the game, it certainly matters because on both sides of this, right? If Ole Miss wins, that's another 10-win season. That is, 33% of the double-digit win seasons in program history in the last 4 years. So 39 wins in 4 years. Yeah, they came up short, but you can still see forward progress and elevation of a program winning double-digit games yet again.
Okay, makes sense.
But if you lose to a Duke team that is without their starting quarterback and his backup as well, their starting running back, the ACC has woefully underperformed in the postseason in both bowl games and in the playoff, and they were 9-17 against Power 4 conference teams in the regular season, the worst Power 4 conference performance this season from the ACC. And you lose to them after losing to Kentucky and blowing both the LSU and Florida games and not even really playing well in the Egg Bowl. And then this entire, not the entire roster, but I mean, Nolan's not coming back. Uman Miel's not coming back. Chris Paul's not coming back. Jackson Dart's not coming back. And suddenly you look at this team and the program and, yeah, you know, they've still had a nice run over 4 years. But, I mean, you're losing 4 games with that roster, including the Gator Bowl and the Kentucky. What really happened here? So one game, one result in the Gator Bowl can really dramatically affect how fans spin the current status of their program. It's a very interesting game when you think about it from those two perspectives.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. So what about who's in, who's not? This whole opt-out scenario, it kind of spins your head.
So did not happen much with Ole Miss. As far as we know right now, Chris Paul, the linebacker, the All-American linebacker, is the only opt-out for Ole Miss. Walter Nolan going to play. Uman Mielen going to play. Jackson Dart obviously going to play. I have not heard one way or the other. I wouldn't expect to see Trey Harris, but that's injury related. You're probably not going to get 60 snaps out of especially the defensive guys. Trey Amos, another guy that's going to play that could be a first-rounder. You're not going to get 60, 70 snaps from those guys, but they are going to play in the game. And part of that is because Ole Miss and the Grove Collective in particular backloaded their contracts. You've had, in this NIL era, fans talk about, well, they should write in the contracts that force them to play in the bowl games. Ole Miss essentially did that. And so you've got a lot of guys that if they want to collect their final check, which is a bigger one than all of their other ones, they need to show up and play in the Gator Bowl. So kudos to Ole Miss for having the foresight to make that happen. And also to the players for agreeing to that. You know, nobody forced them to sign said contract. So that's part of why you're seeing it with Ole Miss as opposed to a place like Oklahoma that had 25 players not playing their bowl game. Not the case with Ole Miss tonight.
Wow. Do you see that perhaps as a more common practice in the future?
It needs to be. I mean, frankly, I can't believe that Ole Miss is innovative in that space. And, again, credit to them for being that. But why is that not common practice around the sport? You're getting them to agree to contracts. Yeah. You have a game on your schedule, incentivize them playing – or not even incentivize them playing in the game. Make sure that they don't play in that game. And that's how it should be across the board. And frankly, I don't like the normalization of opt-outs anyway, and I'm glad to see that at least here locally, that's not part of the storyline.
What about on the other side of the ball for Duke? My understanding is they're number 1 and 2 quarterback.
Number 1 and 2 quarterback out, running back as well, and Malik Murphy, their quarterback, had a really nice season. He was a Texas transfer and ended up going to Oregon State. So I don't know if he miscalculated his value, because he visited Auburn, visited Kentucky, and ended up at Oregon State. Well, where would you rather go? You would much rather go to the SEC than Oregon State, who's currently without a conference, and that's where ultimately he ends up. I have a feeling he miscalculated his value some and had to settle. Meanwhile, Duke brings in Tulane's quarterback, and he's going to be handsomely paid next year, and frankly, he might have an even higher upside. So for this game, Duke is in bad shape at the position, but they probably end up winning with their quarterback leaving because, again, there's a chance he got some bad advice and some bad value because Duke upgraded, it seems.
Do you think we'll see some upgrades, I guess is a word you could use, on the rules or modifications to the rules around NIL? Might that come from the NCAA, state level, federal level, all the above?
It cannot come from the NCAA.
Okay.
It can't, because judges have ruled essentially that the NCAA violates American antitrust law, is essentially what these judges, one particular in Tennessee, has ruled on, where the NCAA cannot restrict earning potential or movement of legal adults without their say-so. And that was their entire model.
Okay.
And so until there's congressional intervention or a collective bargaining agreement, which they do not want to do, this is how it's going to be. Anytime a player wants something, they can sue for it and win. Diego Pavia, Vanderbilt's quarterback, sued for eligibility because he played in junior college, and he won very easily. And that's how it's just going to be moving forward until they get some lawmakers to do something to give them an antitrust exemption, or they collectively bargain,
right,
just like the NFL does.
And the schools, Michael, before we go here, they've been beefing up their collective programs. It looks to me like the deals being cut with the athletes increasing this year over last year.
Oh, absolutely, especially with revenue sharing being here. Yeah. Well, where these departments are, they're going to have to tighten the belt on a lot of bloated spending that they did in sports that did not generate any revenue.
Exactly what's going on.
I mean, it's very parallel to our political climate, frankly, with overspending on unnecessary things.
Might see the termination of some programs because they're financially upside
Unfortunately,
down.
yeah.
Michael Borkey, Sports Talk Mississippi, has been